Greetings, folks, and welcome to episode 60 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. My name is William Fitzpatrick, and hi there, folks. Welcome to the 60th edition of the show. It's been a very long time coming for me to do the 60th episode of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, and with the possible ending of Google Hangouts on August 1st, it's appropriate that I start this odyssey of podcasting that I am going on at this point. Now, no, this does not mean the end of Wacky World of Wrestling in the slightest, okay? I can think of various different ways to continue to do podcasting on this app and any other app I can think of at this point, although obviously I'm not going to jump to Twitch. I'm staying right here. I'm going to basically do what I did in the past, which is just do voice recordings and do editing and post them on here. And in the future, I will get back my live streaming options as I have done in the past. But again, setbacks like this aren't really major to me. I've had far worse setbacks happen over the course of Wacky World's history, as well as the history of my life. I'll be 28 years old in September. Had a lot of stuff happen to me over the years. And, well, folks, you might be wondering exactly what the heck this podcast episode is. Well, we are going on a free episode odyssey into the local independent wrestling promotion, Southern Tier Wrestling, that I attend these shows at. Reason I say Odyssey is because this show is actually from May of this year. STW Goldrush 2019 from the Jamestown Ice Arena in Jamestown, New York. Downtown Jamestown, New York. Yes, Goldrush, their 4th anniversary show for Southern Tier Wrestling. And it began with a takeover in 2016. I missed that show. I caught Gold Rush 2017, was the first STW show that I went to. And this is Gold Rush 2019. Now, as I talked about Gold Rush 2018, that show was a house of fire. What did Gold Rush 2019 do? Well, it was an interesting show. It was good. It was solid. There were a few things, there were a few issues, but nothing too severe. At least how I feel about it. Now, once again, we're going to the venue at the Ice Arena. And if you haven't brought a sport coat, a sweater, at least 3 long sleeve shirts, and a tauntaun to cut the midsection out of to sleep in, then you're not doing the Ice Arena correctly. Because the Ice Arena is cold. Very cold. Especially when you're sitting out on the seats in the center of the ice watching a wrestling match. Fortunately, there was a nice comfy couch, which will come into play a lot later on in this particular show, but first I want to say this. Thank you so much to everybody who has been so supportive of this podcast since its debut in 2013. I know that I've not exactly been the most consistent about posting updates on this particular show, and I would be a lot further along than I am in episode 60, but again, life happens. And things happen, and illnesses happen. That's been the biggest reason as to why these shows have been delayed. And, well, we're going to do this show, Gold Rush, and then we're going to do Take Me Out to the Brawl Game, and then we're going to do the last show, which was Midway Mayhem 2019. So, yeah, let's talk about Gold Rush. This show happened in May. And it was a show that happened at the Ice Arena, as I said. And what was the conditions like? Well, it was a solid house. It wasn't as big as past Gold Rush events, but it was not exactly something to sneeze at. We got about an average about 350 people showing up at the card, at least a rough estimate. Past Gold Rush events have done a little bit more, but again, it was competing against several other events that were happening in the community that particular weekend. So obviously, there was going to be a bit of a lesser turnout. Now, this card had a bunch of matches on it. Let's count them for us: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Yes, you're getting 8 matches. Front row is $20. General admission, $10. Children get in for less. I mean, honestly, it is a good value for money going to a local independent wrestling show where you could be spending $100, if not more, going to a WWE show. and you would be ending up in an arena with a lot of other people. Which is why I think house show attendance is down across the board, is because you got local shows that are providing the same kind of match quality for a lot less, and you're supporting local independent wrestling instead of Mordor. I'm pretty certain that people at this point have gotten so indie about things that it's causing that blowback effect on WWE because, again, corporate culture is seen as much more of a negative thing these days. I guess because many local communities are tired of their favorite companies pulling out of their cities and leaving them without jobs, which is, I expect, what happened in this case. So, Gold Rush. Let's start things off with a announcement. First, they decided to announce a special surprise. As the ring announcer, the only person that can actually get the microphones to work out of any of the ring announcers that have come into Jamestown within the last 15 plus years, Kenny Kingsley, comes to the ring and does the traditional pre-show introduction. He thanks people for coming over, apologizes for the fact that the guy that was originally booked as the special WWE legend person, Tugboat, had to pull out due to his son getting an illness, I believe, was the reason. And it is legit. His son, I believe, was very ill. So he had to pull out of his appearance and was replaced by the genius Lanny Poffo. So he apologized for that cancellation and then went with the, well, guys, we've got a surprise for you because the Goldrush Battle Royale has something at stake for this particular occasion. A brand new shiny championship. Yes, folks, Frontier Wrestling now has a secondary singles belt, the Fireheart Championship. No, it is not on fire, and no, it does not contain an actual human heart, before any of you ask that question. So, in the natural nature of there being a new shiny thing for many wrestlers to go after and to crave, like Golem craves the one ring of true power, well, somebody decided to show up and crash the party. That person, of course, was Brandon Thurston. Brandon proceeds to cut a fire promo on how he's the greatest wrestler on the universe's God's green earth, and decides that he is going to proclaim that shiny thing for himself. Because if there's anything about open shiny things, it's that Brandon Thurston is going to probably be one of the first people to go and try and take the thing. However, another person is interested in that shiny thing, and his name is Invincible Vince Valor. Vince Valor has been on a tear in Frontier Wrestling over the last several years, and has really proven himself to be a reliable babyface. Talked about this before. Vince Valor is normally a heel in most areas, except he's recently turned face in ESW, and he's a face in Frontier Wrestling, which is a bit of a bafflement for the guy because he's usually a villain. However, he has become that beloved working class hero that many people within Frontier Wrestling really like. And so, Thurston and Valor square off once again. This is not the first time these two have fought, and it certainly will not be the last because there's a card in Sherman coming up that involves a submission match, but we'll get to that much later. First, though, is this match, which is the first time in a year that these two have competed against one another. Because the last time they competed against one another was at Fight Night Volume 1, with Thurston, I believe it was Thurston winning that match. So, yeah. Brandon Thurston defeated Vince Valor in this match because there was a match stipulation. The Gold Rush Battle Royale #1 spot. Vince Valor, unfortunately, ended up losing the match. Now, as for the match itself, it was typical Thurston Valor, which was to say great. Classical limb work, old school wrestling, with a flash of modern power bombs and all Japan style wrestling thrown in. When you're getting a Brandon Thurston and Vince Valor match, you're getting a match that is considerably higher quality than what you would normally expect at a local independent wrestling show, because Thurston is training these guys. He's one of the trainers over at Grapplers Anonymous alongside Mikey Every Night and Pepper Parks and a bunch of other people who are trying to change the landscape of professional wrestling in Buffalo after years of heartache and Rust Belt insanity. And they're doing a very good job of it, as we're going to be talking about over the next several episodes, because a lot of Grapplers Anonymous students are on these cards, and a lot of them are very good and are learning very quickly. So, this match ended with the pre-match stipulation of Vince Fowler now is stuck in the Gold Rush Battle Royale in the number 1 position. Not something you want to be in when you're in a Battle Royale situation, especially not for the new shiny thing. However, another dreaded match lingered for our opponents. The Jamestown Mattress match. The dreaded mattress has an undefeated record in Southern Tier Wrestling, and it continues its reign of terror, as its two next victims are Ryan Cassidy and Dakota Orion. Ryan Cassidy has faced the dreaded mattress before. It even helped it beat Super Beast at the 2017 edition of Gold Rush. However, Ryan Cassidy has changed very much ever since that match. Changed for the worse to a certain extent, as he has become an antisocial villain amongst the STW roster. As he believes that he should be one of the people that is competing for those heavyweight championship prizes instead of being stuck in mattress matches. Except that the dreaded mattress is also one of the most dangerous opponents that Southern Tier Wrestling has ever come up with. Dakota Orion is just trying to survive. This match was very interesting, as it's two individuals who are not really known for participating in hardcore gimmick matches. It was definitely a learning experience for these two. And it was a way for them to get comfortable with hardcore wrestling objects without having to really do anything that was particularly extreme. If you not count Dakota Orion and Cassidy flipping around the ring, for example. When they got into the flips and cruiserweight style antics, that's when the match got really good. However, they were both at a loss on how to deal with the dreaded mattress. The finish was fine. It was a solid match. I felt as though that, again, it was a situation where both were kind of unfamiliar with how to deal with the mattress. And this match, while wasn't as spectacular as last year's event, but then again, because you had comedy wrestlers who know what they're doing when it comes to props. These are two guys who don't really interact with props all that much. Cassidy occasionally does in hardcore matches, but Orion, this is the first time for him. I think they did very well for a first time in this particular match. And it definitely set the stage for what is going to happen later. Oh, trust me, Mr. Cassidy is going to be mentioned a lot on this particular podcast for very good reasons. Because we're starting to get into a really good run with Cassidy. Dakota Orion had a solid match. He continues to build up momentum. And remember, this guy debuted last year, and he's already progressing this far. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Dakota going forward, because he's got another match on these podcasts as well, but that's much later. So, what's next on our list? Well, we have an STW Tag Team Championship match. Mako and Vinnie Moon, Finn to win, versus the Ohio Brigade, the Natural Ethan Wright, and Seth Allen. Yes, we have a bunch of Ohio wrestlers in this particular podcast. Hello there, folks. This is your first experience on Fizzy's Wacky World Experience, on Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. So, how did these four individuals do? Surprisingly well, in fact. Although I will admit that Ethan Wright seemed a bit nervous on how to deal with this particular crowd. So did Seth Allen, but then he started to get a hang of it. Seth Allen has not been in the territory since 2013, if the cage match results are to be believed, although he has wrestled mainly in Ohio over the last several years. Ethan Wright is a natural Ohioan who has been in the Midwest territory for the most part. Again, not familiar with the New York State crowd, and it's completely understandable. You're used to the rowdy antics of Midwestern moonshiners chucking random bits of furniture at you. I can understand that. The thing that I'm becoming increasingly impressed by at this point is Vinnie Moon, another guy who has developed very rapidly because of some outside circumstances. What are those outside circumstances? Well, if you didn't hear beforehand, the Buffalo brothers got into a car accident in January. Daniel Garcia, Kevin Blackwood, Puff, and Kevin Bennett. Kevin Bennett ended up with a slightly injured back. Puff was okay, but Blackwood and Garcia got extremely serious injuries during that car accident. Both of them are back in the ring, by the way. And Daniel Garcia is ESW champion. Ow. 6 months is a long time to heal, but during that 6 months, Vinnie Moon was one of the many individuals of Grapplers Anonymous to realize this is an opportunity for me to really advance as a pro wrestler. Because it now gives me the opportunity to really develop my skills. Also, you have to develop your skills a heck of a lot quicker now because of the situation of we suddenly do not have a lot of depth right now as far as youth is concerned. So guys like Vinnie Moon, they step it up, and he stepped it up big time. He was the babyface in peril throughout this entire match as Wright and Allen began to get used to more and more of the Southern Tier Wrestling crowd, which is very vocal, and yes, we do respond to things. But honestly, I can understand their nervousness. They wrestle primarily in Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. They're not used to a New York State crowd. Completely understandable. But they got used to it more often. And Seth Allen began to cheer on the crowd as he beat the bejesus out of Vinny. Mako was the hot tag in this particular situation, as Finn to Win has become a very interesting tag team to watch. The STW Tag Team Championships for the longest time were being held by the Homewreckers, but due to some circumstances involving a betrayal by a certain rebel, they're not currently going for the Tag Team Gold at this point. However, this match was definitely the kind of match that gets the crowd really going. The mattress match was good. The opening match was a great technical wrestling showcase, but match number 3 really got the crowd going. And then the crowd would get going even further with another tag team match. If you listen closely, the ring underneath the ice underneath the ring suddenly starts to crack. As the sound of a rumble of a thunderous roar of boos approaches because we have our guest appearance. Lanny Poffo comes out to cut a promo and talks to the audience, and then is interrupted by the person causing the ice to literally shake from the boos. Super Beast. If there is one person on this roster that can cause an entire building to rattle because the entire audience is bathing for his blood, it's Super Beast and his family. And they decided that they were going to try and take on a poor defenseless old man and beat him up. Rob Sweet and the landlord. Unfortunately for Super Beast, he failed to consider the fact that the genius Lanny Poffo is a former professional wrestler and a former pro wrestling manager. If he doesn't have minions at his beck and call, then you're not doing pro wrestling managing right. He then summons the Covenant, Bennett Cole, in his first appearance for Southern Tier Wrestling to my knowledge, and James Segata, a man who has been on a hot streak of matches as of late. He had that awesome Brandon Thurston match at the Fast Times at Faulkner High show part 2 beforehand. Yeah, this guy is a literal ball of fire. He's another young wrestler who's really started to figure out what he's doing. His gimmick is starting to come together. He's this fanatical kinetic energy who really is into his character. Although it's oftentimes a bit confusing because the Covenant dress like cultists and they're baby faces. Yes, because the family is that hateable. This match was fun. It was an enjoyable, fun match between Rob Sweet, Landlord, Bennett Cole, and James Segata, where one of the highlights of the match was seeing Super Beast being punched by Lanny Poffo. Yes, he got punched by the genius when he tried to interfere one too many times. I felt as though this was a really fun match, really got the crowd going and made it a lively affair. Something about this particular show just seemed to, make everyone sort of at unease. But then these matches came, and it became fun. It became the vibe that I'm used to when it comes to Southern Tier Wrestling shows. And overall, this was a really great match. High energy, high impact, showcasing young talent, as well as showcasing one of the more diabolical heel stables in the STW at this point. And this is not the end for the family at this point, because they're going to be in the Battle Royale. So, what was next after that? Well, intermission came, and of course, I went down to the merchandise tables to talk to the wrestlers, thank them for their matches, and buy some merch. I got a Jet Rebel T-shirt and also picked up a James Segata shirt because I was really impressed by his match beforehand and this match. Again, it's a situation where, like I said beforehand, I like to support local independent wrestlers. And this way, I take my mom to pro wrestling shows, and they do really great matches in front of a captivated audience. And captivated was definitely what we would describe this next match. But before then, it's like, I like this venue. The Ice Arena is a nice venue. I would like it if they did it in the main building so I could sit in the bleachers, but the secondary venue is okay. I definitely think, like I said, I would love it to be in the main hall because they've had wrestling events in the main hall before and it's always been fun. But overall, intermission is always one of my favorite times in wrestling, and also the praise shows. It's so calm, it's so comforting, and pro wrestling shows are one of the few places where I generally feel very relaxed in front of a crowd because I go to relax. I'm not somebody there who gets hyped or marks out or does this. I'm just like sit there. I boo the heels, cheer the faces, and I get to meet some intellectual wrestlers. I get to meet my wrestling buddies, and I get to say hi to people and get to meet people. Because I don't really get a lot of social interaction for the most part. I mostly keep to myself. I feel like these shows are always incredibly fun. And it's something that I get to do with my mom. I take her to pro wrestling shows with me, and we have a really great time. And she was really looking forward to this next match. Ladies and gentlemen, pro wrestling's only action adventure superstar, the adventurer Stone Rockwell, who has not been sued yet by Universal Pictures or Lucasfilms for some reason. Yes, our guy who is literally the comparison to a Nathan Drake and Indiana Jones comparison away, Stone Rockwell, the adventurer, faces against one of his toughest tests, Warchild. Warchild is a guy that my mother remembers from an independent wrestling show that we attended back in 2014-15, I believe. And she was very impressed by his character. Warchild is essentially what would happen if you classed a death metal cultist with a horror movie fan. You get this guy, a guy with face paint, dressed in a Black Skull t-shirt, who is a really good wrestler. Now, for those of you who may not be aware who Warchild is John Bolin. Yes, the guy who was a part of Bolin Works down in OVW. AKA, he was Ryback's tag team partner at one point. Bless his soul. I say this only because of the fact that I'm friends with several people who are not particularly a fan of Mr. Back. Warchild is definitely a guy who is a great wrestler. He understands his character, he has fine-tuned his gimmick, and he's faced against another guy that he's faced against many times before, because the adventurer had a brief trip to an insane asylum. If I could be so bold as to do a winking nod as to his prior character, Asylum. And so, these two clashed in a Clash of the Titans. This was a heavyweight brawl of heavyweight brawls, which led it to be a very good match overall for those who were looking for this kind of match. I felt that it was extremely good, and my mother was excited to see Warchild again, because again, she really likes the wacky character wrestlers who know how to wrestle. So overall, it was a good overall match. Nothing really to complain about here. And then we get to the bunkhouse brawl. Now, after having a hard-hitting hoss fight like Rockwell versus Warchild, what's the next match after this? Frankie Fevers versus Johnny Puma. Oh boy. Frankie Fevers and Wacky World of Wrestling have had a bit of a complicated history. On the one hand, I really like him as a performer. I really think that he's solid. I really think that Frankie Fevers has gobs of potential and untapped talent. On the other hand, he keeps getting stuck in matches where his potential is not really realized. See, Frankie Fevers had a great main event match at the last show, Fast Times at Faulkner High Part 2, where he convincingly defeated Johnny Puma and the Caesar with the dastardly manager John Kennedy to seal off their feud with the Patriot. We thought that was the end of this feud. No, we are going to have our arbitrary singles match that is a bunkhouse brawl. The stipulation of this match changed approximately 70,000 times before we ended up with this. So we ended up with was a hardcore match. And I will tell you this right in front, my mother is uncomfortable with hardcore matches. Usually that's why we attend shows like Southern Tier Wrestling, because they're family-friendly matches. And while there are the occasional hardcore no DQ matches, it is usually very light hardcore wrestling. It's not full-on table-breaking, belt-smacking, and generic building blocks involved. So we're going to get to the two big issues with this particular match free if we're talking about this first. Why are we doing another match with Fevers and Puma? Why don't we do a match where Fevers faces off against somebody else or tries to win the Fireheart Championship? Instead, you're stuck with Johnny Puma, who is, again, a solid, serviceable tag team wrestler despite his advancing years, as I shall call it. But I felt as though that they saw this was a show that happened. No, it didn't happen in May. It happened. I think it happened in April. I think it was WrestleMania weekend. I apologize for that. I'm getting my dates a little bit confused here, but yeah, I was like, but they seem to have the WrestleMania excess thing going. And then we get to the match itself. It was good. It was a good match, but there were two particular spots that I had issue with. First, if you recall the Fight Night Volume 1 show, you may recall that I have a particular not likingness for spots involving whips or belts on an African American wrestler. Particularly when it is only a few blocks away from the Robert H. Jackson Center and they have a slavery display right in front of their building. In their building, yes. So, and because of the fact that I used to do Underground Railroad studies and finding safe houses in this area, along with my mother, was a homeschool project that we did in 2002, 2003. And so I'm very familiar with the Underground Railroad, the abolitionist movement in Jamestown. In fact, one of the first sites that was a safe house was a church that was right across the street from the venue at Fight Night Volume 1. So when I see belt spots, I will comment on it. And it's not going to be positive. No offense to the two performers involved, okay? I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to provide a shocking experience, but they very quickly realized once again that this was not the right thing to do because they got either silence or people just going, oh, come on, guys. So after that was aborted, then we got the second part, which caused my mother to wince more than a few occasions. Frankie Fevers pulls out from underneath the ring a box of generic building blocks. I am saying generic building blocks because there have been occasions where this certain Dutch company has sued people because of usage of the name of their blocks. But if a certain Mr. Brickster began to sense that hundreds of little certain generic building blocks were being spread across the wrestling ring and were suddenly silenced, then there was a reason for it. Yes, we got to see generic building blocks, which were not generic building blocks and were actually a name brand that I'm not going to talk about here. Were spread across the ring and were used for the finish. A superplex from the top rope onto a table. And yeah, that was definitely something. And it was a situation that, okay, it was on Saturday, May 11th, just to clarify the date on this particular show. It was on Saturday, May 11th. So it wasn't on WrestleMania weekend. That would be the show before then, Fast Times at Faulkner High. So, yes, the painful Lego spot, along with the use of a belt once again on an African American wrestler, which I was not really happy with. And my mother was uncomfortable with it because it makes my mom uncomfortable. Okay, guys, it's no offense, but she lived through the '60s. Okay, she lived through the civil rights movement. She has friends who survived the civil rights movement. It's not something that is particularly comfortable. And I've talked about this before, and I tend to be I tend to stick to my guns about these sorts of things. And then there was the spot with the superplex for the table, but it didn't break. The table didn't break. So they had to do another spot where Puma lands on top of the Legos quite painfully. Thankfully, they were wearing Bunkhouse Brawl gear, which padded the impact. Overall, it was a solid match, but like I said at the start of the show, there were some issues here. The belt spot and the use of generic building blocks to cause a lot of pain because both of my folks have stepped on Legos before, and I've stepped on Legos before. I know how painful they are. Oops, yeah, those are where the generic building blocks used, by the way. So, anyway, overall, it continues the complicated history of Frankie Fevers and me reviewing his matches because I like Frankie Fevers as a performer. I feel as though that he is a great second tier babyface or a fantastic heel, depending on what you need him for. And overall, I felt as though that his feud with the Divine Alliance had ended the last show. And I felt that this was just an artificial extension of that. I mean, it's great if it was just a partner versus partner match and Puma basically kind of separates from the Divine Alliance because John Kennedy had been banned from ringside, and while Caesar did assist him, he ended up going into the hockey boards. That was fun. That was a fun part of this match. But they tried to turn it overly serious in an overly serious blood feud. And it already was a serious blood feud between these two individuals. So overall, solid match, but there were some issues. Then we reached our semi-main event, which was Big Time Bill Collier versus Nick Merrick. Nick Merrick had won a number one contendership at the Bergman Roll show and was cashing it in on this show to try and take the STW Heavyweight Championship. Nick Merrick is basically a tweener babyface against Bill Collier, who is beloved by the masses in Southern Tier Wrestling, despite the fact that there have been several attempts to try and turn the guy heel, which have not worked. So this match was solid, but there was one issue, which was the crowd reaction. At this point in the card, the crowd was kind of getting a little tired and exhausted because of the long matches, and the fact it was in the ice arena, people were starting to get chills from the ring. And because of the fact that the Bull Rush Battle Royale wasn't done first, you didn't have that hype zone to watch the rest of the card. And I get why they did that. They wanted to showcase the Fireheart Championship. But what happens in this situation is you're waiting for the Gold Rush Battle Royale. And it leaves the other matches basically a situation of who's going to be competing in this Battle Royale then. However, on a lighter note, this match was solid. It was an incredibly fun match. It was yet another odyssey of a Bill Collier match, which, again, Bill Collier puts in as much work as anybody else, constructing a match that will benefit not only his opponent and himself, but just make it feel like an overly fun and good match, especially after the hardcore shenaniganry of the last match. And thankfully, they made us to sweep up all the generic building blocks before this match happened. Otherwise, I think both wrestlers would be quite upset if there were any Lego pieces around, and they decided to superplex each other on a mat that had Lego bricks on it. Or shall I say generic building blocks. So, solid, fun match. Was really, really good. I really don't have a lot to say about it because, again, it was the outcome where Collier won the match and Merrick shook his hands. I hope that that doesn't really cause anything to happen to Bill if he ends up getting backstabbed because he beat Narek. Hope bitterness and vengefulness doesn't happen in this particular situation. But apart from the crowd not really knowing who to boo or cheer for, because again, this is sort of a traditional wrestling promotion, and it's not a modern hype spot wrestling promotion like in a lot of areas. It's a very much traditional babyface heel dynamic with the occasional tweener match or heel versus heel match thrown in. So then we reach the Gold Rush Battle Royale. And honestly, was as good as the usual he is, but there was one little issue for me personally. During the intermission, Mikey every night had begun to interact with several people on the chair. And yes, there was a big, ginormous sofa. It's brought in every year for people to sit on in case they get uncomfortable with the ice. And Mikey decided to try and take the sofa from a group of kids and their parents during intermission. So we don't normally sit around any form of like areas that are used for spots because I'm so straight faced that it's difficult for me to react to things. And when I do react to things, I think I cause people to literally freak out around me, which was the case here. Now, I'm trying to remember the Gold Rush Battle Royale as best I could, but I'll mention some names here. Matt Radcliffe, Kenny Brown, and Rise debuted on this show. And they're free young wrestlers, and they're newest trainees of the Graps Anonymous School up in Buffalo. And I'll talk about Radcliffe and Rise on a future episode. And there was also Bruiser Smith was the last guy that entered into this battle royale, who was a Ohio wrestler. And the 7-foot-tall giant that I'll be talking about in a little bit, Braxton Calloway. Yes, he's a legit 7-foot-tall giant from Ohio. So the reason I don't remember much about this particular Goldrush Battle Royale is because I was having a laughing fit during the entirety of it. The minute that Mikey Everynight showed up, see, Everynight went to go do his spot with the chair and the children and the parents by taking the sofa. And he got pelted with bits of the sofa and water bottles, which we kind of said to the kids, hey, don't throw water bottles at the guy. But so he verbally interacts with me. He is in character. He yells at his heel promos like, "You shut your yap, man," as I'm booing him. And I'm trying to adjust the camera at the same time because it was having some intermittent battery issues. So I duck down, and I'm wearing this giant hat with earmuffs on it. I'm wearing this hat with earmuffs on the sides because I have hearing problems at these shows, because usually I'm sitting next to somebody who's screaming into my ear at some points, and I have to basically deal with issues with deafness. In addition, I had just come back from a bout of influenza in March and April. So I was trying to take it easy while also trying to make sure not to lose my voice, which I was actually having some issues with. So when Mikey goes down and gets into my face while I bend down my hat as he's yelling, he's not expecting something to come right flying by his face. So the next thing he looks up, he's seeing 5 inches away from his face my mother's fist. In a great bit of crowd interaction that I'm not sure that Mikey was expecting, my mother instinctively reacted, as many a stunt grandma from WCW can attest to, nearly punching the bejesus out of a certain immortal one. 5 inches from Mikey's face is my mother's fist. Because I've told this to the wrestlers beforehand. I've said this story before, I think to Brandon and a few people, but my mother used to work as a crisis interventionist in Corey, Pennsylvania, and Union City, and in Erie. She worked alongside police officers for the social service programs in dragging crazy people out of their buildings when they had an episode, and into a rubber room for a 90-day mandatory evaluation. She was a therapist. She's a professional PhD therapist with a couple PhDs to her name, and she's naturally recognized in books. So my mother instinctively reacts to this, and as Mikey is bellowing, I start laughing. And I hope I really didn't scare the guy, because I start laughing and I can't stop. And the wrestlers are looking into the arena as Upton Sinclair comes into the ring, and he's wearing areas of Ellswood gear. So it's quite a visual. It's quite a visual to see that. So I'm laughing, and I can see some of the wrestlers are looking over and seeing, have I gone nuts? Have I gone actually insane? So then Steve Gaines shows up and decides to in character threaten my mother, which causes an even bigger uproarious reaction from me as I start laughing hysterically as Mikey and Steve get pelted and mauled by children, which I'm sure I hope didn't disturb him, but but he didn't know the in joke. Okay, my mother used to work as a crisis interventionist. Okay, you're basically talking to somebody who has put people who are 3 to 5 times her size, and I should note that my mother is about the size of Alexa Bliss, down on the ground and to pop their shoulders out. She has as good a grappling skills as Brandon Thurston and Kate Kearney do. Okay? So, this person is doing the classic heel shut up routine to my mother after Mikey tried to scream in my face. And I just start laughing hysterically even more, to the point where Brandon is looking out at the ring and is looking at me befuddled, like, okay, did he lose it? Him and Terrell are looking and like going, did he lose it? Did he like actually lose it? So, like I said, I don't usually get involved in the action at STW shows. I mostly just stay in the background, boo or yay people. But I was really a part of the show in this particular instance, and I was like thinking to myself, "Oh my god, I'm not a wrestler. I am not even really much of a wrestling personality or wrestling media person. I'm just here as a fan, or I'm here to relax at a wrestling show, and here I'm getting into this reaction with a couple of people who are being pelted by bits of couch by children." Fortunately for my vocal cords, which were becoming increasingly hoarse as I was laughing hysterically, Braxton Calloway shows up. This giant, 7-foot tall giant who I thanked profusely for doing, which he seemed to be a bit confused by. And he brings Every Night Engage back into the ring for them to be eliminated in the match. But the match itself, it came down to the last 4 people, which were Bruiser Smith, Brandon Thurston, Vince Fowler, and I believe it was Terrell Kenneth was the 4th guy. Terrell Kenneth basically completed the implosion of the patron saints of pro wrestling in Jamestown. So he basically turned on Thurston during the match to be his own monster, I would guess. And it was a situation where the final 2 were Valor and Thurston, basically continuing the theme from the first match. That last part of the match was fantastic, along with everything else about it. The parts I can remember when I wasn't having a hysterical laughing fit during the show. So, like I said, guys, it was not anything personal whatsoever. It was just me, just like going, "Oh God, I know all the in jokes and the meta jokes in this situation," and it wasn't anything serious between my mom and Mikey. In fact, we basically said we actually got a shirt from him at the next show. It's like he thought he had heat with us. It was like, no, dude, we don't have heat with you. You know? And so we had this main event match, which was fantastic. The Goldrush Battle Royale is always a joy to watch. And Valor wins the match against Thurston and wins the Fireheart Championship, but he also gains his first rival for that belt. In the next show, we have another match with Brandon Thurston. So, that was STW Goldrush. And this might be a bit of a shorter show than usual for the 60th episode, but I really did not have a lot of complaints about this particular show, apart from some of the questionable gimmick tools that were used during the Fevers Puma match, which I said was solid. It was a nice bunkhouse brawl match. Didn't like the belt spot and was not particularly a fan of somebody getting landed into a pack of generic building blocks. But that's because that's more out of the concern of, like, I take my mom to these shows, guys. It's not anything personal. It's like she doesn't really like a lot of violence, which is odd because it's a wrestling show and there is violence involved, but it's the kind of violence where that the people aren't going to get too seriously hurt by the matches if they properly train and condition themselves for them. So overall, Gold Rush was a really solid, fun show, but it definitely felt as though that there was a lot going on that made it feel like, that there was a little bit of disappointment amongst some people as to, that the crowd wasn't as big as usual, and a lot of other contributing factors. But I felt like the show went solid. Considering what was going on, I felt as though that this show was solid. Now, like I said, I usually have a more in-depth analysis of the Gold Rush Battle Royale, but due to that hysterical laughing fit, I really can't remember much about it apart from it being really fun and really good. And I really like the new trainees guys coming into this particular show. But next show, well, let's just say the Divine Alliance is going to be covered a little bit more on this next edition, as a certain Canadian anarchist decides, well, enough is enough, and I'm going to have some change, because we're going to the Brawl game for our next edition of Wacky World of Wrestling with, and I'll get this out here for a second, a Wayward Cassidy with a dash of Brawl games for episode 61 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. Thank you so much for watching this edition of the show. I hope that honestly people understand where I'm coming from with the criticisms that I have of certain segments of this podcast. I mean, I tend to be a very positive individual when it comes to these local shows, because I know that and understand that we are in the midst of the Rust Belt, and it's very easy to get depressed in this particular neck of the woods because of the lapidation of a lot of things. It's absolutely nothing personal, but I felt as though that these are things that can be improved upon by the wrestlers and by STW management. Ooh, I happen to know a few of them. And definitely, this was a fun, solid show. But man, I miss college stadium atmosphere. The JCC Sports Complex is just a wonderful venue to have Gold Rush at. And I know the Ice Arena shows do really well, and they're very fun shows. But I'm not sure Gold Rush was really. And they did the 2017 edition, which was fun. But at the same time, it was also during WrestleMania weekend. This one happened in May, where there's a lot of Memorial Day and where there's not necessarily Memorial Day, but a lot of stuff happening around this time period. But I like the inclusion of the Ohio wrestlers. I thought that was really fun. I thought that the matches were really solid to good, and some of them were really great. I just felt as though that there were certain matches on the card that I'm not sure. They were there. They were fun, but they had some issues. But overall, this has been episode 60 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. I thank you folks for tuning in for this first of 3 episodes about Southern Tier Wrestling, and we are going to be going live here in a little bit for episode 61 of this edition of the show. Like I said, nothing personal, guys, but I have to call it as I see it. And if it's something that makes my mother uncomfortable, then yes, I'm going to talk about it. Because, like I said, my mom lived through the civil rights movement and all the riots that were happening in the 1960s and the riots that happened in the 1970s. Because the 70s weren't exactly a fun period of time either, for those who lived through it. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in on this edition of the show. And in all honesty, once again, Gold Rush, really solid, very fun show. I really liked it. There were a lot of fun things about the show, and there were a lot of seeds planted for future story arcs and angles that happened on the next two shows. So we will get to the next show, which is Take Me Out to the Brawl game, which didn't happen at the ballpark, but happened at the Allen Park Ice Rink. And wow, this show was very interesting. But until then, folks, thank you for tuning in for this edition of the show. Thank you once again for supporting us, for me, through 60 episodes, for all the ups and downs, the hardships, and the victories of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. And I'll see you on the next edition of the show, which will be airing very shortly. Have a good day, guys, boys and girls. Have a good day and night, folks. And I'll see you for the next edition of the show. Bye.